there's a bunch of monkeys who are basically, they're just troll monkeys. I really feel like James Gunn did his absolute best to write a good script and have a story that when you reach the end makes you feel positive again. The things I complained about before, the reason I forgive those is because of this scene. She's even questioning Superman for looking at her as beautiful. I thought that unspoken thing between them was beautiful and touching, and both defines and elevates the characters beyond what we're used to seeing. You have an army, we have a crypto. Aloha, movie nerds, dorks, and weirdos. Welcome to the spoiler review of Superman, James Gunn's latest film and our latest iteration of Superman. We have had so many, but this time around we have an excellent supporting cast and really, really good work. I mean, I can't. At my theater, there were actual claps at the end of this movie, and I was one of the ones clapping too. The movie was so full of joy, so full of fun. The action was great. The character writing was great. The Lois Lane was perfect. Rachel Brosnahan nails it, and James Gunn nails it. David Cornsweet nails it. I'm glad they put the trunks back on. I love the way this movie moves is so fluid and fast. It's genuinely like the experience of reading a comic book movie. This is what I'm freaking talking about, dude. So, with that being said, let's spoil the hell out of this movie. If you want my spoiler free thoughts, go over there, check out my spoiler free thoughts. I'll put a link in the description. But today we're talking about spoilers. And so, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you go see it. I think this is totally worth the price of admission from beginning to end. Filled me with hope. I got a little emotional and cried a little bit a few times during the movie. This, as someone who grew up with the Batman the Animated Series, Superman, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, growing up with that as my Superman and DC, I was very happy with this. I thought this is what I'm talking about. I think this is what all the fans were asking for all this time. I think we got it. I think we got it for the most part. I love that big kaiju battle. I should have talked about that. The kaiju battle was awesome. This is a comic book movie. This is a genuine comic book movie from beginning to end. So here we go. Spoilers, okay? When the popcorn pops, spoilers ain't gonna stop. So here we go. Pop, 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 pop. Spoilers! Okay, right up front, there's a bunch of text in this front of this movie. And I'm almost disappointed because the opening of the trailer is the opening of the movie. Where I'm like, again, what is this? This is a trend now where trailers are starting off with the openings of movies. I keep seeing over and over and over again, like trailers are just showing the beginnings of movies now as part of the trailer. I'm like, that is a spoil. This is exactly the type of thing that makes people feel like, oh, I've already seen this before. Trailers, stop doing that. Stop it. But that being said, I love that we get right into it with the footage we've already seen before. They already did show us the opening clip, so it was cool just to get straight into that. Okay, you've seen this before. We showed these clips online, but anyone who hasn't seen it, I think will get a good kick out of it. People were still laughing when Crypto comes down and is kicking Superman's butt after he's already had his butt kicked. I love the angle that Superman is getting beat up in this movie, but also it makes sense why he's getting beat up. It's actually, and I knew it was coming. I think we already know Ultraman is a clone of Superman. So, and when it's revealed that the Bavarian Hammer is actually Ultraman, I'm like, that's not much of a surprise. It would be a problem if there was more than one Superman. Then that's where we get Man of Steel again. So I loved that we just got through the footage that most people have seen already right off the bat, and then we get straight to the footage no one has seen yet, which is the Barbarian Hammer versus Superman, where Superman again loses the battle, also because he chooses to get back into battle without having fully healed. So it's a real, but that is the Man of Steel. That's who Superman's supposed to be. Which to me, this is a huge setup for Death of Superman, which I hope they do as a whole movie after Justice League and do it right this time. But that's who Superman is. Even if he's wounded and winded, he will get back up and keep fighting for people to be safe. I think that just to establish that right off the bat, thank you, James Gunn. That's what we're looking for. Not that we didn't see that with the other Superman iterations, but I thought because of the way it's built out with all the Kryptonian technology and the robots trying to help him, and I actually I wasn't sure what to think about it at first, but I love how they do start off with the message from his parents. It soothes him. It soothes him when he heals. I thought that was a great setup because I didn't expect that to be a paid off at the end of the movie. But I love that, especially with the broken message, which ends up being that the parents sent him to rule, which is something they did in Smallville as well, which is one of the things that made Tom Welling scared and really need to rely on his Earth dad, the father, the only father he's truly known. And I really feel like this movie did a great job of balancing Superman's embracing of his heritage while also how he's basically been raised as an American. I think the movie did a great job of splitting that difference, because I feel like when you get the Christopher Reeve Superman, his Earth dad dies and he just moves on, and Jor-El, it becomes his father, and that's what it is. The AI dad, it becomes his dad, and he's the man of both worlds, but he's also, you see where he kind of lands at the end of that movie. On the other hand, Smallville is all about the exploration of his heritage, and especially with that same exact message of "we sent you here to rule," it becomes part of Tom Welling's growth that he chooses not to be a ruler, but to be someone who's a servant of the people. I think that element playing into this movie is this is one of those great time this movie is one of those great Superman tales of how him being a superhero is a choice. I think the worst angle is that he's doing it because he's told to do it. But I think what this does right, what Smallville did right, is that he's chosen to be a good person and help other people out, which is a line that I love that Pa Kent says to him in this movie when, after getting rescued by Lois Lane and Mr. Terrific and going home. I think it's wonderful how when we finally do get Superman talking to Jonathan Kent, and Jonathan Kent says, the fact that the first half of the message, that's all you had, the fact that that's the lesson you took from it, says everything about who you are, and reminds him that it's not what your parents say or what other people say, it's your choices that make you who you are, which is so perfect Jonathan Kent. And I love the actor. I'm slipping on his name right now, but I'll put it right here. The actor who played Jonathan Kent was wonderful, and Ma Kent. It was an interesting choice to give them such extreme accents. No offense if you're from Kansas and that's your accent. I'm so used to the kind of the universal California-ish accent that I was not expecting that. But I thought it just, when we got to that scene, it kind of added even more to the weight of what Jonathan Kent was saying. It's like, here he's this guy from Kansas in the middle of the country who he's accent and all, these are still the values that came out of him. Why Clark doesn't have this accent, that's where it becomes weird. It's like, well, why do the Kents have it but not Clark? He just decided to stick with. He was like, nah, I'm not going to have that accent. But whatever. Who cares? It's a wonderful movie. But yeah, just geez, the way all this is constructed, the fact that they set up in this opening how much the message means to him, and that this opening battle is just a way for Lex Luthor to locate the the Fortress of Solitude. Again, I was worried about all these things. I'm like, we've seen this before. Lex Luthor always finds the Fortress of Solitude and uses knowledge against Superman. But the fact that they just kind of speed through it, it's very fast. And not only that, having the robots, having the engineer, and she's so badass and fun. And there was a moment I thought she was going to fight Mr. Terrific. It was kind of like, too bad she didn't, but it was okay. It was okay. Just to see how Lex Luthor has created the world around him. This time around, he's not just using idiots. This time around, he really is. I wasn't sure about it. James Gunn had said in interviews, Lex Luthor in this one is a sorcerer of science. And I totally get it. And I'm like, yes, you know what? Not only is it just a great interpretation or a great version of Lex Luthor to see on screen, it was just great to experience, like the battle of different technologies. And it does explain how, again, every character, what makes them a strong character is that there's another character for them to bounce off of. That's good writing. So when you see Lex Luthor's technology is wonderful, it's amazing, but it's also a bit unhinged, it's a bit dangerous. And Mr. Terrific's, when you see his technology, it's perfect, it's flawless. He's someone who dedicates himself to the ideal of perfection, and that his inventions should achieve what they need to achieve without harming other people. And Lex Luthor, on the other hand, his consistent character trait that makes him Lex Luthor is that his ego is so beyond reproach from his point of view. His technology is always getting out of his hands. It's always going too far. That his issue is hubris, that he wants to be important so badly. It doesn't matter how many times he destroys the very thing he's trying to create. He's just certain that he's going to be the one that is the most important person on Earth. But this, to me, I think this is what we need. We needed, why is it so important for him to feel important? Because as much as his envy speech at the end of the movie, that speech is a good speech. It's played perfectly by Nicholas Hoult. Like, he admits that what he's doing to Superman is out of envy, because what Superman can do it's so miraculous, it makes him feel pathetic in comparison. That's fine, but that's still not enough. I really felt like without an actual interaction between him and Superman prior to this, it does come off as superficial and empty. Lex Luthor needed an introduction, or at least one private moment in the movie that establishes and showcases where this feeling of weakness and inadequacy comes from. Because I think the strength, again, going back to Smallville, the strength of that writing is that Lex Luthor was never good enough for his father. His father was always challenging him and telling him to do better. Nothing he ever did was good enough. And even in what makes that friendship so strong between Lex Luthor and Clark Kent, even then, his father seems to think Clark Kent is a better man than him. And that, you see that living by comparison is what has destroyed Lex Luthor for all the years to come, because he has always lived by comparison of what his father felt he should be. And he was never maniacal enough, he was never conniving enough, he was never sinister enough, he was never good enough. He was never moral enough. He never had enough conviction. It was all the judgment of his father that destroyed and eroded whatever good character he could potentially have. And I think that's something that this movie, it just needed scene, one scene of either Lex Luthor by himself in a moment of quiet, either reflecting on what I feel should have been done. They should have drawn back on that Smallville, on that origin from the comics where Lex Luthor and Superman were friends at one point. I think just one scene showing where this feeling of inadequacy comes from is what we needed for Lex Luthor to be a fully fleshed out character. Because without that, he just comes off as a cheap cartoon villain, even with his emotional speech about envy. I think this is something I think private moments are so important when it comes to writing characters that if you don't have them, the audience can't get where your character's coming from. I think, and I'll go back to Slither. In Slither, Elizabeth Banks' character is married to Michael Rooker, and Michael Rooker is really rough around the edges. And you see their relationship is strained, and it's kind of like, how did this even happen? And you see the jealousy that Michael Rooker feels when Elizabeth Banks is talking to Nathan Fillion, who seems much more manly and kind and has whatever it is she's looking for. And he gets a private moment of you seeing him feel inadequate by comparison. And that's really the understanding of that movie is where my criticism comes from. But that's what this movie needed, was for Lex Luthor to have a personal stake in where that inadequacy came from. And that would have elevated why he's so emotional in his speech about envy. The envy has to come from somewhere. Let's see the origin of that envy. But that being said, it doesn't actually hold the movie back in any way, shape, or form. I still find the movie enjoyable and found hope at the end of the movie. But that's my one criticism. I feel like for those who feel the movie is not it's too empty. Like it's a lot of action and fun, but where's the part where I'm supposed to care? For people coming out of the movie feeling that way, to me, I think that's where that's coming from. Because I feel it too. I feel like, you're trying to get the character to be emotional, but where that emotion's coming from is the most important thing. I think this was the flaw of I forget what the bad guy's name was from Volume 3, Guardians Volume 3. Again, you're trying to show this guy freaking out and having emotion all the time, and I think that it just comes off as superficial. Because, okay, so what if we see him freak out? What's the difference between this character and Kylo Ren? The difference is, well, what is it privately that motivates this person? And that, to me, is the flaw with the writing of Lex Luthor in this movie. Because I feel everything is right and everything is done correctly, with the exception of we need one more scene that makes it make sense. So beyond that, I think everything else in the movie totally makes sense. I would have liked a little more Hawk Girl and a little less of her weird screaming, or weird, I didn't even do it right. I did not care for her weird bird screaming, and I don't know if she should have killed the president of blah 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 land, but I think that kind of goes against the speech that Lois Lane says at the beginning of the movie, regardless of her being a different character. Although it's very Thanagarian of her, that totally makes sense as a Thanagarian. But yeah, I also, when we have the scene with Lois interviewing Superman, I think everything from a dialogue standpoint, I wish he wasn't interrupting her every 5 seconds. It kind of just it shows bad character. I do agree that my friend on Facebook was correct in that he does come off as a complete jerk when he's not letting her finish her speech. He's interrupting her. This is not the mild mannered Kansas boy that we're supposed to have been exposed to. I understand where he's coming from emotionally, but maybe get there as opposed to he's flipping out at her at the first thing she says that he doesn't agree with. I think that was kind of the wrong angle to go with because it did come off very one note. But in addition, I think it would have benefited the movie if during their scene where she's grilling him, every point she makes is on point, and she's really challenging him to be the Superman that we all love and know. Which is why would you take the president and push him up against Cactus? That's pretty messed up, man. And he's like, well, he was a bad guy, but again, and I just don't think that it doesn't make sense to make that his character, except for the fact that okay, you're trying to make him grow. I'm like, okay, you're trying to make him grow, and that's not how he treats Lex Luthor by the end of the movie. So it's something that justifies itself by the end of the movie. But I do feel like it's not in his natural character to do that. This is a guy who's spending all his time not trying to hurt people. It doesn't really make sense that that would be something that was off screen. If you're gonna do it, I think you got to show it on screen. I think it would have been better to see how Superman was looking at the scene, being there, even if it was just some short moments, some short clips. It would have been nice to physically see what was going on through his head at the moment that made him feel like it was okay to do this, even though his reaction is basically telling that story. And who knows, maybe they did have that, maybe they didn't. It doesn't seem like a Superman behavior. Because again, I think, when you try to create these arcs, and this is again my problem with the Batman, when you try to create these arcs, these are still things that are innately not part of that character. The character Superman would never torture anybody, even in the smallest way. He knows that his strength is so beyond anyone else around him that he would never ever do that. So that is a violation of the rules of the character. These are kind of my problems that I have with the movie. Just it's in the details. It's Lex Luthor needs a scene that establishes on a personal level why he is the way he is. And I don't think it needs to be a loud scene or an obnoxious scene. Just something that quietly reveals his sense of loneliness and emptiness by comparison of Superman. It's not enough just why do they love you and not me? That is not enough. That's still the superficial consequence of a deep personal reason. The deep personal reason is what's going to get the audience to understand you. And on the flip side, Superman would not rub someone up against a bunch of cactus. I think that's modern day junk. That modern day people, the modern day sense of humor is that these things are okay, or it's what I mean. But that's not who this character is. But I understand you need that because you want to establish the greater conflict that Superman does need to become who we know him to be by the end of the movie, where he's gentle with Lex Luthor. I'm like, okay, that's fine within the context of the movie. We're gonna allow it. You know what I mean? Guy Gardner, that haircut. Actually, I felt on screen during the movie, and maybe it's just because of all the months of buildup, I really did not mind that haircut when watching it on screen. This is something that I try not to do. I try not to react to things too early. I already have made that mistake before. I think Ben Affleck is the last time I want to be make a fool of myself when it comes to these predictions. Everyone hated the idea of Ben Affleck being Batman, and after that BVS came out, he was considered the best part of the movie. So that's the last time I ever want to sit here and react to something so early. I did say that haircut was terrible. I think I did say it on James Gunn's account. But again, watching it in the movie, not that the haircut indicates that he's a jerk, just that his attitude, it makes sense when you see it. You know, it's just like, this is a guy who could care less about what other people thinks. If he thinks it's cool to him. Hence the whole Justice Gang, which nobody supports. So I thought that's hilarious. And then on top of that, well, Mr. Terrific, I was excited for from that first shot in the trailer when I didn't even realize that that was Lois Lane next to him. Just that shot where he creates the red force field around him and then he suddenly levitates. I was like, what am I about to see with this man? You know what I mean? He's the like a Dr. Manhattan without actually being Dr. Manhattan. Like he's that powerful. I thought, man, this is Mr. Terrific was terrific. I love Isabella Merced. I remember her popping up in Transformers 5 and you know, she has that relationship that was kind of adorable with the little R2D2 transformer and I don't remember much other than that. The only part of that movie I remember is just her having that cute robot and she was kind of like a little renegade hero type. I'm like, this kid's good. This kid's really good. And so I'm really happy to have seen her in Last of Us Part 2, which, say what you want about the show, I think she was solid. I really thought she was top notch. And I saw her in something else recently. What was it? I saw Isabella Merced. Oh, she was in Alien Romulus. She was great in that. So I think I'm really glad she got to be Hawk Girl. And I absolutely love when we go into the interdimensional rift space that there's a bunch of monkeys who are basically they're just troll monkeys. And actually this is a real thing that we have. This is my problem also with people reacting to things they see on the internet. You do not know what is real and what is not. It's by design there to make you emotional, disruptive, and destructive. And that's what you're doing. You're falling right into the hands of what the algorithm is trying to get you to do. And it's a real thing. People have discovered there are people with cell phone farms in their homes creating hate, creating things that make us divide each other every day of the week because hate fuel works. It's like if you can't step back and stop doing everything with your emotions, you're not actually going to solve any problems. You're just another angry person sharing an angry tweet, and you don't even know where that came from. It's so obnoxious and annoying, and I wish people would just stop. This is a superhero movie, okay? This is a superhero movie. Can we just watch the movie and not bring up politics for 5 seconds? What's wonderful about this movie is it's purely comic book. It's purely comic book, page turning, action, not nonstop, but a pretty good amount of action. I felt like just the right amount. The drama and the excitement, it just keeps moving. It's so fluid. And I really feel like James Gunn did his absolute best to write a good script and have a story that when you reach the end makes you feel positive again. And for those of you who didn't feel that way, hey, that's totally fine. You know, it's too bad. But, you know, hopefully they'll get it next time for you. But for those of you who enjoyed this movie like me, hell yeah, right? Like, I think we got a movie that was wonderful. I think we got a movie that was genuinely wonderful. So heartfelt and so well-meaning. And again, the message of these characters, like, we have to stop being so obsessed with our own biases, this confirmation bias society that we live in, that is so beyond reproach or any version of accountability. Again, this movie is about those very same things. It's like wherever you land on whatever issue you're having, you've got to be accountable for yourself. And it's more important to be kind and to really think about the right way of doing things. Do that first before you get emotional and rage fuel and hate everybody. Slow down. Think about what you're doing before you do it. That's what Lois Lane has to say to Superman, and by golly, by the end of this movie, he does not abuse Lex Luthor one bit, even though he has all the emotional reason to do it. He simply steps in front of him as a man to another man and says, "What you got, what you're doing, has to stop." And then, all right, all right. Worth the price of admission spoilers. Okay, now that I'm in spoiler anyway, now that I'm done complaining about the rest of society, you freaking freaks. Um, yeah, worth the price of admission moments. Number one, okay, when Superman comes to face Lex Luthor at the end of this movie, and Lex Luthor thinks he's gonna get his ass handed to him, and instead Crypto does it. I thought this was a wonderful moment. It reminded me exactly of the first Avengers when Hulk tosses around Loki, and I just immediately thought, you have an army, we have a Crypto. I can't believe that he worked that in there, and again, set up right from the first scene in the movie that that's one of the last Crypto scenes we get. I thought wonderful. You know what I mean? Like, this is comic book fun. And Lex Luthor gets tossed around as he deserves to be, but not by Superman. And Superman, again, he does what Superman's supposed to do and says, "Hey, hey, stop roughing him up." And another thing, I thought the kaiju battle, another worth the price of admission. I was so in love with the kaiju battle. It was so cool, so much fun. And the fact that this is our introduction to the Justice Gang. And again, Superman's trying to defeat it without killing it while still saving everybody else, which is wonderful. And of course, these guys are not into that. But I think that's, again, this is one of those wonderful scenes that defines Superman as who he is. He's truly a person who has zero prejudice against anybody, no matter what they do. And it's a wonderful, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is Superman coming back from looking for Crypto. He can't find him, and you have this battle happening off screen, which is a typical James Gunn joke, which I love it. But also, it's, again, when you see it in the context of the movie, it makes sense. Where the Justice Gang is already known to have been running around fighting crimes. If they needed Superman, they would ask for his help. But they're so powerful between Green Lantern's ring and Mr. Terrific's technology and Hawk Girl's pure badassness. They're so powerful, they take care of that thing just fine without him. And what I also like about that is that this is such a comic book movie that it's not only is it giving us all the action we could ever want, but it's kind of showing us how, hey, here's Superman. He's just winding down from a day of doing whatever Superman do. And out there, yes, other superheroes are doing what they do. And it's 100% like, we're not seeing what they're doing because this is not their comic book. But if it was their comic book, we would be seeing their entire action scene. So it's kind of, to me, it's a joke within a very smart joke, which is like, hey, we're just showing you what the comic book would never show you. In the comic book, when Superman's at work, he's just at work, but in this another comic book also coming out on Comic Book Wednesday, there's someone else fighting somebody in Metropolis, and Superman has nothing to do with it. And so this just puts the camera in the position to show you, hey, he's not needed, and he knows he's not needed. That's why he's not there. But someone else is having a comic book adventure over there. I thought that is so genius and really makes me excited and hopeful that we will get more of this universe, and hopefully it's handled just as well. I hope that if there is a Justice Gang movie or Green Lantern movie or Mr. Terrific movie, I hope that we get an identical scene where Mr. Terrific is winding down from a day of being Mr. Terrific. And we also get the angle of Superman fighting some kind of kaiju in the background. And Mr. Terrific's like, it's Superman. He's got it, you know. And we could literally even just see Superman giving a devastating blow to the kaiju. No, I see he's got it. He's fine. You know, I hope that's something that we get in the rest of the DCU, is that what the Marvel movies never gave us is this. It's these totally in comic book within, it's like the what's between the panels, right? That there's that space between the panels that Doom Patrol literally goes into. Call back to if you've seen Doom Patrol season 1. But it's that space between the panels where things are happening that only the characters are aware of. You know what I mean? Like, I always love it when I have read a comic book and, well, actually I hate it when I don't have the accompanying comic book, but I always love it when you read, oh, these two characters are interacting, and one character goes, oh yeah, last month we fought Doctor Doom. Oh yeah, I read about that. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, no, I saw that out my window. You know, those little tiny things that comic books sometimes do. Well, I think when I read the Civil War comic book from Marvel, the tie-in was wonderful because then you got to have those things where in the Civil War comic, Spider-Man reveals he's Peter Parker, and then in the Spider-Man comic books that are tied into the Civil War series, you see him come back home from making that choice and what that eventually leads to on his side. And I think that's the mistake that Marvel has made, is that they keep doing these epic things, but they forget to do the tie-in storylines that are affected by these things. It's all, you know, they just keep doing the big events, but no tie-in. And I think that's partially where they're losing the audience, is that, hey, the audience, you just gave them something amazing and they want more of what that has to do with the rest of the universe. And it's just a turnoff for MCU fans by themselves to say, hey, this epic thing happened and you're not even going to have another movie deal with it. And, you know, Black Widow doesn't count because it's happening after the events of yet another major event. You know, I think Marvel really suffers from its world building, and what I appreciate about James Gunn's Superman is that the within this movie, the world is a full world where something can just happen in the background and it's okay because that's somebody else's comic book. We can't see their comic book. That's somebody else's comic book. But it's just happening because that's the world we live in. And that's something Marvel never did. And I'm so glad that James Gunn actually put that in this movie. And it's one of those moments that, again, after Batfleck, I don't do this anymore. Like, just wait to see what's happening in the movie before you complain. All the internet, you know, anger. Why is he just sitting there? Oh, some just crazy things are happening outside and he doesn't care. Actually, I think the best meme about that is the one with the Power Rangers, the Megazord fighting Goldar as Superman in the front. Because, hey, the Power Rangers got this. They're going to defeat Goldar. Superman knows he doesn't need to help out. That meme best exemplifies how the movie approaches this, which is, yes, there's other superheroes out there. I don't need to respond to this right now, you know. And it just makes it so human, and that's the strength of this movie, is making more important than any other character. The reason I forgive the things I complained about before, the reason I forgive those is because of this scene. where Lois is, they're still on the conflict they were about earlier, but Lois is, she's explaining like the reason I was upset is like I that she sees herself as someone who's combative against everybody and challenges everybody and sees flaws in everyone. She recognizes that as something that's not great about her, that turns a lot of people off. Not everyone wants to put up with it. And then she says, but you, Superman, you see everyone as beautiful. And by that, the subtext of that, she means including me. Like she sees herself as ugly for looking at the ugliness of everyone else around her. She sees her own character trait as something that makes her unattractive, that has failed her in relationships before. And she's even questioning Superman for looking at her as beautiful. I thought that unspoken thing between them was beautiful and touching, and both defines and elevates the characters beyond what we're used to seeing. I think, you know, where they failed with Superman Returns, which was number one, just giving them a boring emotional plot line, storyline that just did nothing for the characters. Where they failed with Superman Returns, James Gunn's Superman succeeds and quite and elevates. You know, like the very thing, what makes Lois an unappealing character in Superman Returns, because she's needlessly scrutinizing in that movie. Or at the very least, if there is a necessary need, it's never explored. In this movie, she not only questions everybody else, she clearly has insecurities about herself. Like her scrutinization is not just outward, it is also inward. And to have that private moment, that's the private moment I'm talking about. When Lois Lane has her back to camera and her back to Clark and says, "This is why I said relationships don't work out for me." And then Clark just leaves, which is terrible. You know what I mean? But also he's angry. And from his point of view in this moment, actually, this is a very Kevin Smith kind of sequence now that I think about it. This is more Kevin Smith than anything else. But yeah, that's what I like about it. It's just that humanity. That God, again, I'm ruining a relationship because I just can't stop challenging the people around me. You know what I mean? And honestly, that's how I feel about myself. I really feel that because I've had trouble keeping friends as well, and it's always because you see in this video the way I've talked about people and how they deal with political issues, right? Like that's how I challenge people. I look, if you sit here and tell me something is your value or you want to be valued in a certain way and then you do something that I feel is completely counterproductive to that, I'm going to tell you. If you do something wrong, I'm going to tell you. And you know, everyone's going to tell me what I do wrong too. Or if they don't, I know they really don't care. If they're doing it to put me down, I also know they don't care. But if they're not willing to talk about it, I know they don't care. But I care enough. I'm going to talk to people based on how they behave with me. And that's what I see on Lois Lane. But also, being that blatant and honest comes with the cost of no one's going to like you. People just won't like you if you call them out for their behavior. They will not like you, you know, because most people don't want to be questioned and challenged. And that's what Superman's dealing with in that first scene. But to turn that around in their second big emotional scene, where it's like, how can you see me as beautiful? That really made me emotional in that moment, where I was like, holy shit, I'm relating to this character, but I want my own Supergirl to see me as beautiful despite my flaws too. You know what I mean? No, but really, like I just thought, this elevates the character, and you can see why she wants to save him, because this is the one person who sees her as beautiful despite the flaws that she herself knows holds her back in many of her other relationships. It goes unspoken beyond this point, and that's also good writing. She doesn't need to tell Mr. Terrific, hey, he's the only guy that sees me as beautiful, despite the fact that I can't shut up if I think someone's done something wrong. You know what I mean? She does open up a bit too much, but and he's like, I don't want to hear your drama. You know what I mean? That's what I love about Mr. Terrific is like he is exactly what I remember from Justice League Unlimited. And he's like, I'm not interested in your drama. I'm just here to fight crime, dude. You tell that to your boyfriend. You know, he's truly he's a complete character. That was very fun. But yeah, I just think, and again, the fact that these conflicts are what lead to Superman being more the Superman that we know by the end of the movie. The fact that he confronts Lex Luthor without trying to hurt him. And even in his final battle with Ultraman and the engineer, he does try to tell them not to fight at first. You know what I mean? There is an attempt to stop the fighting. But he realizes, look, nothing I say is going to stop these people. You know, I think that's the parts of Superman that matter when we reach the end of the movie. They're there, but they're only there because Lois pushed him to be more accountable for his own behavior. Say, hey, if you're really here and mean what you say, you cannot just do everything that you want to do. That's what makes you a dictator and no better than the people you fight. And he needs that lesson up front to be the Superman that we love at the end of the movie. And yeah, I think James Gunn just nailed giving us a Superman that needed to grow and making sure he does grow. So I can totally see by the next movie he's going to be that Superman, and it's earned. And I thought the post credits were fine. You know, they were fine. But I love that we saw Supergirl before the post credits. That was nice. I don't know about Supergirl being a party girl. I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that's a choice. She's a party girl. But I don't know the comic books, so if that's a part of her character, then that's just something I don't know about. I do remember her being fun in the Superman animated series, that she was someone who did enjoy having a good time. So maybe that's just something that the animated series couldn't get into. But it's fine because the minute she showed up like that, and then Crypto jumps her and is smashing her around, and she's totally fine with it because she's still invincible. It just made Crypto make sense, and that made the whole movie have another element of comedy. I'm like, wow, this girl does not train her dog. She, you know, typical teenager. And I love Millie Alcock. I hope I'm getting her name right. I'm just saying that off the top of my head. I hope I got her name right. Millie, I'm pretty sure the first name is Millie. She was so wonderful in those first couple episodes of Game of Thrones. Like truly wonderful. Her and the actress who played Alicent, I thought, you know what, these two are meant to be stars. They're really great. And of course the actresses who played their adult versions and carry the show forward, top notch. And I love Olivia Cook. Like I've seen, she was in. But either way, I'm not here to talk about them. But Millie, she was great. I thought seeing her as Supergirl, actually, she fits it. She has that right blend of, again, a modern day looking person with the Supergirl I grew up with the cartoon. And so, again, just like the rest of the Justice Gang, I'm glad that this is a Superman universe that's filled out as if there was a Superman 1 and 2 that we just didn't see. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. Like, welcome to the Superman universe. Like, superheroes are here. We're good. You know, we've had enough origin movies. And this is what I like about, and I know James Gunn, I read something he doesn't like Batman Begins, but this is what I like about when superhero movies do it right, from my point of view, is when they do not retread things we've already seen. So I love that you can watch Superman the movie and Superman 2 and feel you're seeing a perfect origin of Superman's issues. Or you can watch Man of Steel and see, like, this is a much better version, not perfect, but a much better version of why Zod acts the way he acts and why Superman chooses Earth over his own people. You know, I think each one of these movies tackles a different angle of the character. And what's beautiful about this movie is it goes the next step and says, hey, he did get Supergirl. He found her. And he does live in a world with other superhumans. And this is what it looks like. And we're here. We're just here. Let's play in the sandbox now. Let's we don't need to build. Now we're in a world where the regular audience understands superheroes exist and they share a universe with each other. Let's just start there and stop rehashing things we've seen before. And most importantly, what makes me feel James Gunn did it right is that, first of all, it was nice seeing Bradley Cooper as Jor-El, and the actress playing Laura, I just saw her in something. She's been in a number of things. It was nice to see her again. But I love this. We get all this buildup of how important seeing his birth parents was to him. All that buildup, only to find out that the message that they have to send is actually quite terrible. I do think it was a bit overwritten. I think they could have just cut out a couple lines of dialogue because it really was overwhelmingly bad. You know what I mean? I think it could have just been slightly more vague. You know what I mean? And not just like we have a beautiful first half, which is perfectly written, and then the second half, which is more than a half, is too many lines of dialogue that are just so overtly bad. It's like, I mean, that doesn't even line up with the first half, dude. Like, it could have just had at least one line cut out that didn't make it sound so horrible, but still just enough to make people go, "You're here to rule us?" You know? Okay, that was a bit much. But to have the final payoff being, would you like to see the videos of your parents? It soothes him. And there's the fact that they just repeat it, but it ends up being his family videos of growing up with his Earth parents. And I thought, this, you know what I mean? This is what this character is all about, is that, you know, it's not just that he is an immigrant, but he's also only ever known Earth as his home. And he can let go of the destruction that he came from. And this is really about him embracing his home in full, you know, and not just seeing his Earth parents as, hey, you're not my real parents, which I think is kind of the half problem of the Supermen before, with the exception of Smallville. I think it's all about, like, this is the full expression of this character, is that yes, he's an immigrant, but technically he didn't experience that. You know what I mean? I think, you know, people lean on this so hard because of the current political climate, but if you really think about the character, he has no experience of his former land, and he does hang on to it. What the way I felt it in this movie is that it meant a lot to him because he grew up feeling different and odd all this time and not knowing why until his parents finally told him he was an alien. You know, and so it meant so much more to him because, oh my God, this is where I come from, and this is an option for me to, I can use my gifts for something useful. But again, it all comes back to Jonathan Kent's line of the fact that you took the first half of that message to mean you were meant to be a hero says everything about who you are. And again, the reminder of his choices. But the fact of the matter is that those comforting words from Jonathan Kent, the fact that that lines up with the first half of that message from Kal-El's perception, right? Like this is what makes Superman who he is. Not just that he adored a heritage he's never known, but that his father, his American Earth father, did give him these values, but more than that, his natural way of being, something that it only needed nurturing, but his natural, his what was in Superman's heart was to be a good person the right way. And that is the beauty of this character that James Gunn understood. And so, just to dip back to the Dean Cain comments, I hope Dean Cain sees this movie and sees it in full. I hope he can appreciate that the movie is not, it's not attempting to have anything to do. I really feel like the smart thing about this movie is it's not attempting to have anything to do with today's political commentary. If anything, all this movie is trying to accomplish is being a good Superman movie and acknowledging all the aspects of the character, which includes his the fact that he's an immigrant, but also that he's an American. And the end of this movie is about that part. And I thought that's touching. That's really touching. Not the cultural part, but the fact that he spends the first half of this movie, or so he spends 3/4 of this movie so worn down by the expectations of his birth parents, who he never even knew. And it's the end of the movie where he is reminded by the parents that raised him who he actually is, what he's, and who not just who he is in terms of they raised him, but what's in his heart, and that it comes from himself. And the fact that even though his parents were good to him, he didn't have to turn out the way he did. But that's what means so much to his father, is that, wow, like, the fact that you came out this beautiful is in itself a miracle. That's wonderful. The fact that his father reflects that, Lois reflects that, it's amazing. And this Superman who chooses to fight for decency and humanity, that's the Superman I can stand by and support. You know what I mean? I really think this is also the Superman we all need. We all need to be a little bit kinder toward each other. I know I got angry, and honestly, if you pay attention, I was putting all political sides down. I really can't stand the extremism on either side. I think it's all ultimately self-destructive. Never mind destructive toward others, but it's self-destructive. You're going to destroy the very thing you're trying to protect. I think the truth is in the middle, and I'll just make it a little bit more personal. Okay, this is we're going to take a sidestep here. For me personally, I'm of mixed race. I am white, and I'm also Hawaiian and Samoan and Native American and all those other things. But for the most part, Hawaiian and Samoan and white. And so for me, I grew up with only knowing mainland San Francisco, America, as this is my home, this is how I see myself. And only in high school, after my grandfather died, did I actually go to Hawaii for the first time and see my real, legit Hawaiian family. That's, the indigenous Hawaiian family, and get exposed to that culture and just to see what the aloha spirit actually was. And yes, the family I grew up with did represent that in aspects, but to see that in full bloom with the native Hawaiian family was like, it was a total different experience, and it was something that really meant a lot to me. And the fact that I was growing up with Smallville at this exact same time, where literally the same episodes that are going on while I'm going through this is Clark Kent discovering his heritage, and it means something to him. It made me see Superman in a completely different way when I saw Hawaii for the first time, and the heritage, the special heritage that I had. It was a beautiful thing, but it also made me realize like I'm not a true Hawaiian by my native family's standards. I'm a mainland Hawaiian. I'm just a typical American, and that's something I feel with Superman when he's walking around as Clark Kent. That's what he knows. That's what he grew up with. The S on his chest is it's what allows him to be his native self, but he's not really that guy either. You know what I mean? He is Clark Kent. He is a well-meaning guy in a world full of very selfish, angry, intense people who don't want to give each other a break, which includes Lois Lane. She's an intense scrutinizer of other people. You know what I mean? Or even Jimmy Olsen. He does not want to be with Lex Luthor's girlfriend, but I think even he at the end appreciates her affections. Which that was great too. God, the Miss Tessbacher of this movie was wonderful. I forget her name, but she was great. I love that. That was just, again, talk about the small thing that makes the big thing great. Ay, ay, ay. Because again, what is Lex? He mistreats the people that are around him because he feels he's better than them. And what does that get you? It gets you nothing. That's what defeats you. And Superman keeps the people around him because he treats them with respect and love and care. And if we could all just do that with every action, with every battle, we could see this world change for the better. Yeah, that's what I have to say. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought from beginning to end, what a blast. And again, when he's watching the footage of his family, that really hit me emotionally because I think at the end of the day, that's what matters. If you're fortunate enough to have a really good family, that's what matters. And if you don't, then try to make one and know that this is what a good family looks like. This is what love and kindness can get you in this world. What a wonderful movie. Hats off, James Gunn, cast, crew. Wonderful. Hats off to that gorgeous woman in the glasses who I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. I don't know who she is, but that gorgeous woman in glasses in this movie. Whew. Hubba hubba, sharoom. Okay, enough being a perverted little dork. All right. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Movie nerds, dorks, and weirdos. I am here to talk about movies and get nerdy. And I hope you are too. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Mahalo and aloha.